Hey everybody, it's Andrew back again with another video, and today we have our review of the Asus ZenBook Pro UX501VW. It's the Dell XPS 15 competitor, a powerful ultrabook laptop, 15.6-inch screen. Let's check it out. Let's find out if it's a buy or a don't buy. Now, as you know, I recently unboxed the Asus ZenBook UX501, which is the ZenBook Pro, which I have here, and it is a direct competitor, in my opinion, of the Dell XPS 15, which I unboxed recently and reviewed, and gave it very, very high marks. I actually love it. Now, comparing this to the Asus ZenBook Pro, we all are wondering, well, which one is it? Which one is the better of the two? Well, let's find out. Let's start with the build quality. The Asus ZenBook has some very good build quality. It's got aluminum brushed metal finish, as you can see here, and it doesn't disappoint. Now, it's not as nice, in my opinion, as the Dell XPS 15's carbon fiber, and it's beautiful construction. I really think that outshines this one. This is no slouch by any means. This is a very good solid construction, and you do get these chamfered edges, as you can see here. I don't know if you can see that on the side there. So it does have, you can better see it from here. So it does have these chamfered edges, and it's a very nice, classy touch. Now, as far as ports are concerned for this device, this doesn't disappoint. On one side, you have two USB 3.0. You've got a full-size SD card. You've got a headphone microphone jack, and that's it on that side. On the other side, you have your power supply. You have another USB 3.0 for a total of three, a full-size HDMI, which is always good, micro USB slot right there. Now, on the front of the device, you have a power indicator light, whether or not it's charging, and disk activity indicator. So you do have that on the front. That's a nice touch. On the back is nothing. And on the bottom, you have two speakers, one over here and then one over there. 4 feet on the bottom, you have vents over there. Now, what is this baby rocking? Well, it's got a Core i7 Skylake, 512 gigabyte, very fast SSD, and we'll go through the CrystalDisk Marc tests. We'll do the GeekBench Test as well in the performance section of this video, and we'll get to that in a moment. This is a very powerful machine, and it's designed to compete with the Dell XPS 15. And the reason I say that is because if you open it up and look at the screen, it has a beautiful UHD 4K display. 38 by 40, 2160 UHD display, IPS, excellent viewing angles. It's strong, it's crisp, it looks very nice, and I have to say, I'm very impressed. Now, I don't think it's as good as the Dell XPS 15, which has 100% RGB and just an absolutely gorgeous color rich. Everything is just so beautiful on that Dell XPS 15. This is also very good, but not quite as good, in my opinion, as the Dell XPS 15. Now, the screen does look very crisp. It has a lot of depth, and thanks in part to the screen's impeccable pixel density, you really are not going to be disappointed. Unfortunately, I noticed a lot of reflections from its glossy screen, as you probably can see from this video, and it did get a little bit distracting. Now, also, it produced a very wide variety of vivid colors. It did very good in the test that I performed on it. It renders 112% of the sRGB color spectrum, which is a wider range than the category average, which is typically about 84.7%. The Dell Inspiron 15 had a 93.4. Just to give you an example, the MacBook Pro did an 86%. This has 112% of the sRGB. For those of you screen snobs, you probably would appreciate that. Now, as far as the brightness, it did get not quite as bright as I was hoping. It had 258 levels of nits, or 258 nits, and I was a little bit disappointed in that. The MacBook Pro, I believe, gets over 300. I think it's 303 to be exact. So not quite as bright as I would like it. The Dell definitely got higher than that, and but overall, the screen is definitely very good. Not quite as good, in my opinion, as the Dell XPS 15, but great nonetheless. Now, as far as the trackpad and the keyboard is concerned, it was pretty good overall. Now, as far as the keyboard, it has 1.5 millimeters of key travel, so that was very good. It has a numeric keypad on it, really nice touch. I was finding myself hitting the number lock button instead of the backspace button a lot of times, disabling number pad, so that's a little bit of a negative in my opinion. It is backlight, it does have different levels of brightness, it did work well. Trackpad, as far as that's concerned, mixed bag for me. I thought it was very good at some points, and then it started flaking on me, started doing some weird things, the reboots, had to do updates, had to do re-updates, we'll do all these things to try to get it to work normally. Eventually, I think some updates did fix some of this, but not as good trackpad wise as the Dell XPS 15. For those of you who are wondering, I think that one is one of the better Windows trackpads. This is okay. Not terrible, not a deal breaker, but not as good as the Dell XPS 15. Okay, now one thing that sets this apart is its performance. And now this won't disappoint you, ladies and gentlemen. It'll be a good gaming machine. It'll be a good for video rendering, Photoshop. It'll do all that very well. As far as the graphics are concerned, it's powered by an Nvidia GeForce GTX 960M video card. I believe it has 4 gigabytes of memory. I'm not really sure. It's either 2 to 4 gigabytes. I'm going to double check that and let you guys know. But it did very well. Let's take a look at some of the benchmarks and see how this device has performed. Now, as you can see from the GeekBench Test, this did extremely well. It did a 3392 on the single core score, and it did a 12,679 on the multi-core score. Some excellent, outstanding numbers in my opinion. Keep in mind, this is running a Core i7-6700HQ at 2.59 gigahertz. It has 4 cores and has 8 threads. And this is one very fast Skylake processor, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget, it also has an Nvidia GeForce GTX 960M in it, so that's going to really boost performance tremendously. As far as the SSD is concerned, it is using a, let's take a look at it here. It has an NVMe Samsung MZ VPV 512. So it's a 512 gigabyte Samsung NVMe SSD, and it's excellent performance. So let's take a look at the CrystalDisk Marc. And as you can see from the CrystalDisk Marc score, it got a 2177 on a read, and it did an astounding 1583 on the write. Very, very good scores, especially for a portable device. Yes, I'm calling this portable even though it is a 15.6 inch and it is less than 5 pounds. So you are getting a portable powerhouse. Very good scores, ladies and gentlemen. On its own, this did very well. In fact, it did better than the Dell XPS 15 that I had, but now keep in mind, that had a Core i5, and I believe it wasn't as obviously it's not as powerful as this one. So very good scores on the read-write speeds on the Samsung SSD that's found in the Asus ZenBook Pro UX501. Now, to test the sound of the Asus ZenBook Pro UX501 with its speakers, which are located on the bottom, let's take a look at my latest video, which is the unboxing of the LG Gram 14, which is, by the way, a full review is coming very soon. But let's take a listen. Let's see the video here. Let's take a listen to see how the sound on this device performs. The volume is turned up to 100%.
YouTube, it's Andrew back again with another video, and UPS man just dropped this baby off. It's the LG Gram 14, a 2-pound laptop that will give the MacBook Air a run for its money. Let's find out if that's the case. Let's see what's inside this box.
Now, I'm a little bit disappointed in the sound, and the reason being is, according to this, it says it has audio by Ice Power, which it's a Bang & Olufsen technology, and I was expecting better speakers out of this premium laptop, and I was a little disappointed. It didn't get very loud, didn't get as rich as I was hoping. I did try to adjust some of the settings. It didn't really make that much of a difference. So as far as sound is concerned, I'm a little disappointed on this device. Well, as far as battery life is concerned, I was not disappointed. It lasted for a total of 6 hours and 40 minutes on normal usage. Screen brightness of about 60%, and it wasn't bad at all. In fact, I was a little bit surprised with such a powerful processor. You've got the Core i7 HQ version, and you've got the obviously Skylake, and you've got the Nvidia GPU in it. So I was expecting anywhere from 5 to 6 hours. I was actually able to eke out 6 hours and 40 minutes. And according to the Battery Bar Pro program here, 96,817 milliwatt hour or 96 watt hour battery, So it's a nice size battery, and it should have such a big battery in a nice size device. So it needs to be able to power this device. So overall, battery life was pretty good at 6 hours and 40 minutes. Not bad for a 15.6-inch powerhouse. Now, here's what I don't like about this device, and here are some of the cons. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this screen has some wobble. Now, since it has a nice 4K display, I'm going to use the touch screen. Look at this. And I'm not sure over time if that's going to get worse or not. So the week or so that I've had it, it's been pretty consistent, and it is have a wobble. So unlike the Dell XPS 15, which had a much sturdier screen, this seems to have more flex in it, and not great as far as I'm concerned. Now, the other thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is the build quality. Although it seems pretty nice at first with its brushed aluminum design, I'm not crazy about some of the build quality, especially when you compare it to the carbon fiber of the XPS 15. Here you have a little bit of flex. I don't know if you can see this. Let me zoom in. There's a little bit of flex on the keyboard. And I don't know, it just didn't seem as sturdy as the Dell XPS 15. So that's just another thing to keep in mind as far as the keyboard is concerned. Not terrible, not a deal breaker by any means, but if you're going to compare this to the XPS 15, which you should, and especially when you're looking at that price range, you definitely want to keep this in mind. Now, as far as the trackpad is concerned, I'm not crazy about the trackpad. As I stated earlier, I've seen better Windows trackpads, and it's certainly not on the level of the MacBook Pro trackpad, which is legendary in my opinion. But the Dell XPS 15 did much better with its trackpad and than it did on the UX501 here. And although this wasn't terrible, it wasn't great either. I've had some driver issues. I've had some flakiness on it. I've had to do a number of restarts to get it working properly. Ultimately, I'm going to have to say this is not the greatest trackpad I've ever used on a Windows device. It's not the worst either, but it's certainly not as good as the Dell XPS 15. It's certainly not as good as the MacBook Pro. Now, the other problem, as I stated earlier, I've had with this machine is the numeric keypad. Although I like the fact that it has it and that you can, especially your numbers crunchers, your accountants, your people using this for Excel spreadsheets and so forth, you're going to really appreciate this. When I was typing on this keyboard, I was hitting the numbers lock button, which is right next to the backspace. A poor placement in my opinion. I guess you really don't have much choice as to where you're going to put it, but I was constantly hitting the number lock, therefore disabling the numeric keypad and activating the arrow keys. So in fact, that was a bit of annoyance. So not crazy about the backspace number lock spacing, because I was getting those two confused. And when I was typing, it was causing issues. Now, another thing that I want to discuss is its price. Now, when you're comparing this to the Dell XPS 15, you're already talking above $1,000. In fact, this one cost $14.99. I was able to get it open box, I think, for $13.50 and change. But this is normally $14.99. Now, for $14.99, with the Dell XPS 15, you're going to get a Core i5, not the Core i7 as you find in this machine. You will get the Nvidia GPU, and you will get a lot of the same features. But as far as Core i5 to Core i7, the same price, this is a better value in my opinion. Now, unfortunately, the screen to me is not as good on the Asus ZenBook Pro as it is on the Dell XPS 15. So when you're comparing these $1,500 laptops, you have to take that into consideration. I like the keyboard a little bit better on the Dell XPS 15, although I like the fact that this has a numeric keypad. I was constantly hitting the numbers lock button. So as far as keyboards are concerned, I like the Dell XPS 15's keyboard better than this. Now, as far as battery life is, when you're comparing it to the Dell XPS 15, this did better. This did at 6 hours and 40 minutes, and I'm sure if you even went down further as far as screen brightness, more aggressive with your power management, you probably can get over 7 hours. As far as the Dell XPS 15, that wasn't very good. I only got between 5 and 6 hours at most. Sometimes I would get even less depending on what I was doing. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is RAM. The 8 gigabytes you'd get on the Dell XPS 15 is half of what you'd get on this. This has 16 gigabytes of RAM. And the other thing you have to keep in mind, this has a very fast NVMe SSD by Samsung, a 512 gigabyte SSD, whereas I believe on the 1500 version of the Dell XPS 15, it was 256. So you're getting double the storage capacity and you're getting double the RAM. and you're getting faster write and read speeds on the SSD on the Asus ZenBook Pro UX501. So those are some of the things you need to consider when you're comparing the Dell XPS 15 and the Asus ZenBook Pro. As far as whether or not what is my favorite, well, as far as looks are concerned, I like the Dell XPS 15 better than this device. So I would probably go with the Dell, but if you need more performance, you're more for gaming and all that stuff, I would go with the Asus UX501 ZenBook Pro because of its dedicated graphics, which is just working out a little bit better with the 16 gigabytes of RAM and the double the RAM and double the SSD. So overall, what do I think about the Asus ZenBook Pro UX501VW? Is it a buy or a don't buy? I'm gonna have to say it's a buy. I like the fact that it has a beautiful 15.6-inch 4K UHD display. Although it's not as good as the Dell XPS 15 and it has bigger bezels, I think the display in its own right is very good. I also like the fact that they were able to put a numeric keypad onto the keyboard, although I did have some issues with the placement of the numbers lock. When I kept hitting the backspace, I kept hitting the numbers lock, therefore turning off the number keypad. Therefore, I was having some problems with that aspect. But overall, I think it was working very well. The keyboard did work very well. It had good key travel. It's nicely backlit. And the trackpad is very good as well in this device, although it's not as good as the Dell XPS 15. It was a decent trackpad, not the best, not the worst I've seen on a Windows laptop. Certainly not as good as the MacBook Pro as far as keyboard or trackpad. But as far as value is concerned, I'm really impressed with this laptop. At $1499, you're getting a Core i7 with 4 cores with the HQ version. It's a Skylake, and it did very well in its read and write speeds. And I'm really impressed with the NVMe Samsung SSD found inside this baby. And I also like the fact that it comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 512 SSD, as opposed to what you would get on a Dell XPS 15, which would be half the RAM and half the disk space. So I'm really thinking this is a very good value for people who are looking for a high-end laptop with high-end performance but not high-end price. For $1,500, you're getting a very well-spec'd machine. So overall, it's a buy. Stay tuned. We have some exciting things coming up here at AMD Tech. We have a very special unboxing. Hopefully on Monday, I'm expecting a delivery of the Samsung Galaxy Tab Pro S, the much anticipated Samsung 2-in-1 challenge to the Surface Pro 4 and the Surface 3, and I can't wait till it comes in our studio to unbox it, hopefully anticipated on Monday. So stay tuned for that. Following that will be a full review of that device. Also coming up is the full review of the LG Gram 14, that 2-pound laptop I just unboxed and have been putting it through its paces ever since, and I'll give you my full review and my overall opinion of that device. So that's upcoming as well. So we have a lot of things coming, so stay tuned. Hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to share this video. Till next time, this is Andrew from AMD Tech. See ya.